Good morning or good afternoon to some of you. Thank you very much for joining our coffee break today. My name is Rob Mattern. I'm with Mattern, and I'm with Deanna Crawford, our consultant who handles our Phase 3 program. Our Phase 3 is post-contract implementation of any type of contract that we negotiate. Deanna takes over then and really monitors that contract for our clients for the next 3, 5, 7, or 10 years. And we'll get a little bit more specific on those actual duties. But Deanna, how are you doing there today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing excellent. Excellent. Exciting topic. So before we get started, I'm just going to walk through some housekeeping rules here, as I do on every one of these calls. Everyone is muted. Unmute yourself to speak, ask questions, and participate. Make sure to introduce yourself when you do take yourself off mute. Please feel free to submit questions through chat. We'll be monitoring that throughout the call, and we'll work them in as best as we can. And be sure to keep yourself muted to avoid any background noise. So that all being said, please grab, hopefully you received your Starbucks gift cards. Grab a cup of coffee, and we'll get started here. So as I mentioned, the Deanna monitors our contracts post-implementation. So we get hired by large firms to run their outsourcing RFP, offsite record storage, equipment, whatever. We go through that process. Contract's negotiated. Firm signs it. We then oversee the implementation of the equipment or the new contract or whatever, or relocation of records, of boxes, if it's offsite record storage. And then Deanna gets involved and helps with that implementation, but also then starts monitoring the contract. Well, hey, you just got to approve invoices. Well, a little bit more than that. We tend to, as important as pricing is in our contracts, we do a terrific amount of work on the terms and conditions. And in some cases, we feel they are more important than pricing. We also include in their reporting that the service provider has to complete on a monthly basis, and a scorecard with penalties. Now, a goal is not to collect these penalties, okay? But in most contracts, your only recourse if you are not satisfied is to cancel it, which is kind of like the nuclear option. So we tend to put scorecards in there with financial penalties that the firm can elect to collect, okay, or waive. But it tends to keep the clients, the service providers focused on that account and to provide the services. Again, we do collect penalties for our clients. Okay, we don't want to. We rather see their performance, but they're in there. Okay, so, and that's all falls under Deanna's responsibility. How many contracts do you monitor for Mattern right now, Deanna?
As of right now, I manage 27 contracts.
27 contracts, okay. And when you manage them, what do you mean by that? Okay, exactly what are you doing for our clients in that regards?
Yeah, so a lot of things that you just mentioned. So I review and I approve the invoices on a monthly basis. And as you can imagine, with 27 contracts, that's over 100 invoices that I'm looking at every month. I'm looking for errors. And then if I identify any errors, I'm working with the service providers to get those credits for them. On the scorecard side, I'm making sure that if there are any penalties, as you mentioned, that I'm going back to collect those for any missed SLAs. I also negotiate addendums. So if there's any changes throughout the contract, I'll help to negotiate those and make sure that they're put through according to the terms and conditions. I'm also a point of contact for any issues that might arise. And then I do complete, as you mentioned, an annual or semi-annual compliance report. And that really just gives the firm a great overview of what happened the last year, and then lets us make recommendations on how to move forward.
Okay, and when you say recommendations, we're talking about how to increase savings?
Yeah, increase savings, get more efficient with their process. Anything that may have changed, if there's different things that need to change in order to save money, or if there's different refreshes that need to happen with, devices. Those are the types of things we discuss during those meetings.
Okay. I tell you, on a scale of 1 to 10, what value what do our clients think of our Phase 3 or your involvement with them?
Yeah, I
And
think
that's
that the feedback is always very positive. At the end of all the compliance reports, I ask if there's anything that, they want changed or, how they feel about how we're doing. And I always get positive results. I think that they lean on us as, a good resource, having the industry knowledge to, be there just as a source of, helping them with anything that comes up.
okay. I tell you, what's your background?
My background is actually offsite storage. So I worked at Iron Mountain for about 9 years, and then I spent another 2 years at Access. So lots of offsite storage in my background.
Okay. And it's interesting that well, I'm not going to jump ahead here. Well, I tell you, of all the contracts that you monitor, outsourcing equipment, output, offsite record storage, which contracts tend to have the most errors?
Unfortunately, offsite.
Okay.
And I am very familiar with offsite invoicing, but yeah, in general, I mean, when I'm looking at contracts, in our customer base, what I'm managing, about 85% of all the contracts that I'm looking at over the last year have had at least one error that we've uncovered. So, that's a large percentage. You wouldn't think that with all the terms and conditions that we have in place that there would be any errors, but unfortunately there are. So, when we look at those errors and I look over, the last 12 months, I found over $100,000 in savings that have been trickled back to these firms that we manage.
Yeah, in developing MatternPILOT, which again, you're probably wondering when are we going to get to that, but we're laying the foundation here. We did a lot of, gathered a lot of data on what we're approving, a number of errors. I was shocked that 85%, and these are well-structured contracts that we're negotiating, that 85% have errors.
Yeah.
Is really hard to believe. I was like stunned.
And, even with well-defined contracts, you might have escalators that are very well-defined, but maybe they put them in at the wrong time. So, there's things that need to be watched as the contract progresses that you need to make sure you have eyes on.
Okay, great points. So, just interesting that offsite tends to have the most errors. No knock against your former industry, but I guess I'm not totally surprised by that. I'm sharing some slides here. I'm just going to walk through MatternPILOT. So you're probably wondering, why did we develop this product? Well, I tell you, based upon the phase 3, what Deanna's doing for our clients, there's a lot of firms out there that have issues. Okay. And primarily we were thinking about smaller firms, but really large firms have tons of issues too. Okay. So we're kind of, we developed this with a smaller firm in mind. However, this is applicable to larger firms. If they just want us to take a look at one contract or look at benchmark a multitude of contracts for them. But what we have found with working with firms throughout the years is that there's very little centralized management of the contracts. Okay, they tend to be in different pockets throughout the firm. Some don't know what the expiration is of another service or whatever that coincides with them, what they're doing. I tell you, lack of contracts in some cases or lost. I tell you, one thing I always find when we start talking to a firm about offsite record storage, they don't have their contract, or the last contract they have is from 30 years ago, and it's just been renewing with the Schedule A's that come out every year. So we'll oftentimes reach out to the offsite record provider, offsite service provider, and ask them for a copy. And it's surprising how many times they can't find them. They don't have a copy of the contract. So again, how do you approve invoices if you don't know what your contract says? Now, again, in offsite record storage, you do get the Schedule A's, but again, it's surprising that people don't have a copy of their contracts on file. Okay, smaller firms, again, their spend's not as large, so they have decreased buying power. That was another thing we were trying to keep in mind when we put this program together. And also, too, a questionable review approval process. Okay, like again, who's taking a look at them, who's signing off on them, something like that. We go back and we sometimes go back and do an audit of the past year, and it's surprising what people are missing who aren't used to looking at this every month. Deanna, how long, like a typical invoice approval, how long does it take you?
It depends on how many locations someone might have. It could take, as few as 15 minutes, or it can take as long as hours. Some of my invoices are 91 pages long is my longest one. So, that takes some time to get through. But I think your point about the contracts is valid. I mean, a lot in offsite specifically, those contracts a lot of times were acquired from other companies. So that's
Yeah.
sometimes where they get misplaced. So, it definitely is something that you need to keep an eye on to make sure that the Schedule A's that you are receiving are marrying back to your original contracts.
Yeah. Outsourcing, I tell you, lack of addendums for, price increases or escalations on a yearly basis, and we're adding, deleting people. Equipment contracts, again, lack of addendums, changes made. So a lot of areas that can be tightened up for firms that we deal with. Okay. And also too, when we have been asked to work with a firm for a contract, we look at previous contracts, a lot of them don't focus on terms. And I hate to keep on picking on the offsite record storage industry, but I tell you, I don't think we've ever found a contract out there that had any terminology on how to what happens at the end of the contract, what happens to your pricing. You know what I'm saying? How do you get out of that service provider and move to someone else? What's the rate of transfer? When are the payment of the per mile fees and something like that? So a lot of them just tend to focus on the terms, and again, tend to focus on the pricing. And we think, again, terms are equally as important as pricing. Anything you want to add to that, Deanna?
Yeah, I would say specifically around escalators. I mean, escalators are going to be silent in a lot of contracts. So if you don't have that in place up front and you're not actively watching or pushing back when you get new price increases, then it can very quickly get out of hand.
So that all kind of lends itself to, okay, hey, how do we help firms that they don't want the whole RFP process, or they don't need the whole RFP process? They just need a renegotiation possibly, or they do need an RFP, but they want to make sure that all their other contracts are handled along with the one that we negotiated. So we came up with MatternPILOT. It's again meant to be flexible in regards to the number of contracts or exactly what we're doing for the firms or what they need. And it's really a fractional outsource procurement. We really want to get fancy and use some buzzwords and something like that. You're reading all about fractional CFOs for law firms and something like that, for marketing help. We're taking this to the procurement side. And again, procurement just sounds to me like a pricing exercise. And I want to stress very carefully that it's just not pricing. You want to make sure the terms, and you'll see when a few slides from now, how we also take into account the effect of cost recovery on some of these contracts. So we're looking for, okay, hey, I got an area that hasn't been looked at since Nixon has been in office, offsite record storage, office supplies, or whatever. Help me negotiate a contract or negotiate a contract, or how should it be structured, Mattern? Again, we want to improve the pricing and the terms. We could stay involved on invoice review and approval, or that could go back to the firm. Okay, we could review the reporting that we're going to ask for as part of almost every contract, and or the scorecards. So it's, again, what does the firm need, and how do we best supply it to the firm? So again, we could take over all your procurement. Okay, and again, could be an RFP, could just be a renegotiation, or we just take over certain parts. So anything you want to add to that, Deanna?
Yeah, I would just say taking over procurement in our places of expertise. So we can't help you with every single thing, but the lines that we definitely cover that you're going to hit later is definitely where we can assist.
Okay. Okay, so how does it work? Okay, we identify the contract the firms want reviewed. Again, I think there's going to be, in talking to some firms now, that, hey, we want you to take a look at everything you have expertise to do. Okay, and I'll list those at the end of this. We're going to come back and outline the areas of improvement, and not only with pricing, but the terms. and what the fee would be. We work on a flat fee. Now here we're putting a little kicker, and I'll explain that in a second. But we're going to say, hey, it's going to be X number of dollars per year to look at these 3 contracts for you and monitor them, renegotiate them, monitor them, get the reporting, and approve the invoices. So we're relieving the firm of that burden. If you're okay with all that in that scope, then we'll implement the client approved recommendations and go after those contracts or whatever we negotiate. And then post-contract, Mattern can stay involved if he wants to approve them, or we could train the firm on what to look for when you're approving the invoices. So again, meant to be very, very flexible, fit to what the firm needs. Okay. So Deanna, anything you want to add on that area?
Yeah, I think just in general, taking the approval of invoices off of your team, right? Free them up to do other things that are more important within the organization, and let us who are used to seeing these invoices on a monthly basis, look into them for you. I mean, I think it's a great blend.
Yeah. Again, and it's not going to be it could be one contract, could be a multitude of contracts. Again, meant to be flexible and meet their what the needs are of the firm. How does it work from a financial viewpoint? Okay, we're going to charge you a flat fee, as I already mentioned. Okay, and a lot of the times, and really our other types of engagements, we get our fee covered by the vendor you select, and we guarantee that. Or some firms don't want to go that way, so what we'll do is we'll provide a guarantee that will be covered in savings. And we're taking that same premise here and applying it to MatternPILOT. Okay, we're going to say, hey, listen, whatever fee we're charging you, we're going to either get it reimbursed by the vendors as an incentive, like $10,000 up front or whatever, or we're going to cover it in savings in X number of months. And that will be all part of our initial assessment. So the goal here is for us, for Mattern, to provide these services to the firm, it will cost you $0. That's the goal here. A lot of our larger engagements that we work with firms, where we're doing a national outsourcing contract or a national offsite record storage, that fee is reimbursed. That's easy. It happens all the time. We're taking it down to the next step and getting it covered by multiple vendors, or we'll cover it in savings. So again, the goal is to be $0 out of pocket for the firm after we get through with the negotiation. And then what happens is if we're involved for multiple years, those years are covered by that vendor too, or by savings. That's the plan. If we can't cover it, let's say we take a look at your contracting as solid. There's no room for improvement. You did a great job, or someone did a great job previously. Then what we'll do is we'll tell you that right up front. And maybe it's just a flat fee per year to monitor the invoices or whatever. So again, meant to be flexible, but the goal is for the firm to be $0 out of pocket with our involvement. Okay. Now, we also put in there that kicker that if we exceed that flat fee, let's say we get all our costs to the firm covered and there's additional savings, then we would split those 50-50. So once we cover our fee with either the reimbursement or the savings, then a percentage of that savings will split 50-50, and we'll document that all, of course. But again, meant to be $0 out of pocket to the firm, and if there's additional savings, we split those equally 50-50. So, Deanna, anything you want to add on that fee?
Yeah, I mean, I just think that in general, what I love about Mattern is that we will take a look at any of those contracts with no obligation. So there's really no reason for you to not send us contracts, just to take a look to see, what can we do? Where can we save? Is there any savings there? And we'll give you that feedback, honest feedback up front, so that there's no surprises. So really, there's nothing for you to lose to walk down this path to see how we might be able to help.
Yep. Again, oftentimes we'll put an NDA in place, either the firm's based NDA or we have one that a mutual NDA that we'll share with you. But there really, as Deanna said, there's no risk here. We'll take a look at it. If you've done a great job, or that we can't help you, we'll be the first to tell you. There are some contracts that, we've been doing this 28 years, that we can improve. okay? Or your options are limited for approval. We got one contract now that a firm is saddled with $30 firm out fees on their offsite record storage. We would have to negotiate a 100-year contract to get those perm out fees covered to produce any savings for that firm. So again, if that's the case, then we're going to recommend an alternative strategy in order to improve your situation. So anything I'm missing on that, Deanna?
I think you got it covered.
Okay. And lastly, just listing all the different type of contracts that we handle. On the office services, where we got to start 28 years ago and working with firms in that area. Any multifunctional devices, printer contracts, mail equipment, even though that's going away to a large extent, but still some firms need a mail type machine. Courier messenger, overnight services, office supplies, which I tell you, surprisingly, during COVID and for the past couple of years, it hasn't really been a factor, but now firms are buying much more snacks and higher end coffee that wasn't covered by their original contract. So we're renegotiating a lot of those contracts and getting a contract in place that works for them. And so that's hey, we've signed 2 or 3 in the last month alone on office supplies. And then outsourcing those functions. Smaller firms tend not to, but larger firms, absolutely they do. About 80% of firms do outsource those functions. Administrative side, we do a lot of benchmarking of administrative resources. Again, that's not really doesn't fall under MatternPILOT. That would just be a typical engagement, but we do that in terms of determine what's the right staffing. A lot of firms are going through a lot of adjustments with that, with the whole hybrid workforce now. And we come up with a plan to make sure that the right people are doing the right tasks at the right cost. A lot of firms are outsourcing or looking to outsource some of those functions, document processing, billing, e-billing. I mentioned about cost recovery. Again, instead of just a pricing exercise, we always take a look at, okay, is there any way I could recover these costs? Okay, if the clients are still paying for it and something like that, and we do surveys quite often, cost recovery, and what we see, and this has been the trend for the last decade, pre-COVID and now, the hard costs tend to be billed at a much higher rate by the attorneys and paid at a higher rate by the clients. So we recently did an outsourcing of a library/legal research operation for a New York-based firm, and we turned all that into a hard cost. And again, this just kicked off at the beginning of the year, and we're getting data now on what's exactly getting paid, but the results are very, very promising. So we took something that legal research, which a lot of clients won't pay for, a lot of attorneys won't bill for, and turned that into a hard cost, and we're collecting much more than we did previously. And then negotiate legal research contract. So we have a partner that does that. But again, that could fall under MatternPILOT. And then lastly, records information and records, information governance and records. What we do is we write a lot of information governance policies. Now, again, that doesn't actually fall under MatternPILOT, but the offsite record storage contracts definitely would. Okay. And again, I already mentioned the outsourcing of the records management and library services. So, Deanna, anything you want to add there?
Oh, you did a very nice overview.
Hopefully, after 20 years, you think I would have this down. So, I tell you, we got a couple questions that were submitted previously, and one wanted to know what tool we use to help with this MatternPILOT. And actually, we don't have one specific tool. We got systems that we created in-house to help obviously keep track of the contracts, expiration dates, when incentives are due, and the whole, the savings aspect and the recommendations. That was one question that came through previously. Another question came through, like, are you aligned with any vendors? And when I say aligned, or I'm interpreting that as a partnership, and we're not. We are totally independent. We sit on the client side throughout the entire exercise. We deal with any vendor out there that could possibly service you, and we'll list those for you and give you the pros and cons. And again, if a vendor is doing a good job for you and you're happy with the services they're providing, and your contract needs to be tweaked or improved or modernized, again, that's great, because a lot of people are not happy with their current vendors. But if you're happy, we just got to get a better contract and reporting in place. Something easily done. It's something we do all the time. So, any other questions? We're going to keep this to a half hour today. Keep it short. Any other questions from any of the participants? Again, you can use chat, or if you want to take yourself off mute, you could ask them.
Hi, this is Daphne. I'm with Catton.
Daphne, how you doing there?
I'm well, thank you. For those of us that may have engaged with one or two of your competitors in the past and have gone through the process of digging into the contracts and determining where there should be renegotiating and actual renegotiation, is there a line by which, okay, so that's done, and now we just need the services of managing the actual contract that exists?
Okay, I didn't know we had any competitors.
Aha,
Kidding there. Okay. Is it okay? So you're saying, hey, there's a contract in place that was done with another consultant, and when could Mattern take over? Is that the question?
That is the question. And in what capacity, other than what I'm hearing is, and I want to make sure my understanding is correct, is that at this point, the contract is clean, it's renegotiated, hopefully in the right way. Now management of the contracts to ensure that, you know, the escalations, the invoices are correct, that we're not getting the shaft with regard to SLAs. All of that would be something that we may be interested in, given that we are kind of revamping our procurement in-house staffing anyway. So I'm just looking to really understand kind of what's available to me and what makes best sense for Catton.
Okay, great question. We could take over at any time. Okay, if that contract's in place and it's clean, now we're still going to want to review it and benchmark, and there may be something additional terms we would want included. And again, that would be, you know, us approaching the vendor along with obviously with the client and asking for it. And again, it's not going to be anything unreasonable. We're going to come up and ask them to cut their price 50% unless we find that it should be. But again, if you had another consultant look at it, hopefully your pricing's good. But we could take over at any point and manage that.
Okay.
Okay. But again, we will review it and we'll let you know, hey, this is solid or this is an area of weakness. Are you okay with us approaching the vendor to ask them to, improve their reporting or different types of reporting or whatever? Again, it shouldn't be an issue. They should be happy to do it. But we would bring that to your attention.
They will not be happy to do it, but it's okay.
Well, unfortunately, you're right in some situations, but again, they should want to do it. I just wrote an article that's going to get published next month. I always knew when my children did well in school because they couldn't wait to show me their report cards. If they weren't showing it to me, I kind of knew right off the bat that, hey, something didn't go well there. These vendors should want to report on their performance.
I think from my perspective, they just went through it and it wasn't as fun as, it was fun for me, wasn't that much fun for them. So to open that can up again is what I was referring to. But yes, you're absolutely right. They should want to do what's in the best interest of their client, just as we do it for our clients.
Exactly right.
The key is really to keep an eye on it, right? So lots of firms go through negotiations and then they check that box off and file that contract and think they don't have to worry about it anymore. So, letting Mattern take over and reviewing the invoices and making sure that they are following all of those terms and conditions that you work so hard to get in place and that new pricing is key. Because like I mentioned before, if there's an escalator and then they put it in 6 months early, that's not what you agreed to. So if you don't have someone who's actively watching that, you should, either appoint somebody within the firm to do that or have us assist with that. And, we can manage this however it works best for the firm. We just need to take a look at your contracts to see what you currently have in place to make sure that it aligns with what we want, the best way that we can manage the contracts, right?
Yeah, and I tell you, just one other point, we're talking to another firm that they have a in-house procurement department. It's really only a couple of people. There's some just, I don't want to say concerns, but questions whether they are getting the best deals or not. I tell you, the benchmark we do, as we already mentioned, that we'll take a look at it for no cost and let you know exactly where it stands up and how it can be improved or if it's solid. So again, we're meant to be either we can do the whole thing. If you don't want the whole thing, we could do a part of it or just certain areas. So, okay, we're at 32 minutes here. Are there any other questions? Okay, that being said, great job, Deanna, showing your expertise. I usually say Deanna's been working in the offsite record storage field before joining Mattern for 20 years, and she always kicks me out of the table for that one. I tell you, a recording of this will be available, and we will send that out. And if there's any other questions after this call, and that's our contact information, please don't hesitate to reach out to address any of your needs. So thank you very much. Take care.